my name's Sunil. Most of us have met, either in person or through social media, Zoom, etc. I'm a property investor. I say mentor, but I don't do much of that anymore. And I buy and hold property, and I'll come on to that in 1 second. So I buy and hold property for a very long time, and we also have an estate agent. This is not the background is not an image, it's actually my office. We're in City Bourne, so if ever you're passing, please feel free to pop in. We have a team of 10 people in the office and 5 or 6 people out on the road, doing various maintenance stuff out on the road, etc. So that everything is changing, as we know, and the key to change is to be ahead of it. So we do health checks. If you've got tenancy agreements and everything else that you need help with, then get in touch and then we'll be able to help you to make sure. Because I'm sure you will agree that it is very, very easy to get into a relationship. If it's a partnership, if it's putting a tenant into a property, it's very easy to put any tenant in. You go down a pub and somebody's had a drink and they say, oh, my daughter's in-laws and son, whatever the situation is, will rent your property and I'll be your guarantor, etc., etc. But it's very difficult to get tenants out of properties. So this leads to the thing about amateur landlords. What do amateur landlords do versus what do professional landlords do? So amateur landlords, and Paul, I don't know, feel free to come in at any stage that you wish, then yeah. Often it's feeling sorry for the person who's viewed the property, and they may feel like they've got to let the property without taking a deposit. So an amateur landlord would agree to let the property without taking a deposit at any stage. So they'll go to, as I say, to the pub and they say, oh, we haven't got money. And I said, don't worry, we know you. So they'll sign a tenancy agreement or they'll let the property without taking a deposit, which is not a good situation, but we'll move on to the next bit. So a professional landlord will never agree to a deposit payment plan, because that's one of the things that is being offered. People say, oh, will you take a deposit payment plan? Under the law, you can't do that anymore because it has to be registered within 5 weeks. The landlord will always take a 5-week deposit in advance, which is now not only the industry standard, but the law. So before, the industry standard was 6 weeks, and some landlords have still got deposits of 6 weeks they're holding from the tenant, and they're in breach of the law, because what should happen is that they can only hold 5 weeks. So 1 week has to be returned to the tenant and a deposit protection redone to the correct value. Professional landlords will always collect the rent deposit in advance of the tenant moving in. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but some tenants can change once they have a set of keys in their hand. It's like they have a personality change. And I don't know if that's ever happened, but it's happened to me a few times. So how many days do you think legally you need to protect the deposit? So you take a deposit, how many days do you have in order to protect the deposit? Number 1, within 28 hours of receiving the deposit from the tenant, within 14 days of receiving the deposit from the tenant. Never, as the government will know that I have a rental property, and I don't want them to know, just before serving the Section 21 notice, or 5, within 28 days of receiving the deposit from the tenant. If you'd like to put anything, if you'd like to put 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the chat, that'd be great. We have 1, 5, 5, 5, 2, 1. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So the person that put on number 2 within 14 days of receiving the deposit, they were correct previously. The law did state that you had 14 days in order to protect the deposit. The landlord started saying, well, if I'm on holiday, I can't do that, and things like that. So the government then changed it. So when they changed the 2019 tenant fee ban, it came in that they gave landlords more reasonable time. So they gave them 28 days in order to protect the deposit. So now it's 28 days. If you still have a policy of 14 days, you'll never be caught out. So always ensure that you protect the deposit and make sure that the tenant has the prescribed information. Now, if the deposit came from a third party, so let's say I'm renting a property and I go to Paul and say, Paul, could you put down the deposit on this property, please? Then Paul is known as a interested party, and it must be named on the deposit situation as well. Paul, before I carry on, I've gone through a few slides there. Would you like to come in on anything or share some stories of yours?
I think I'd go back a slide and talk about kind of your friend down the pub. I remember having an experience where there was a chap that I literally grew up with. You know, we knew their family, they knew our family, etc., etc. And he was actually renting a commercial property from us, but the rules are somewhat similar, or the good behaviour should be somewhat similar, if I'll put it to you that way. And I said to him, right, all you need to do is bring over your ID and your proof of address. And he was like, you know where I live, Paul, and you know who I am. And I said, yeah, when I go down the pub with you, I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly where you live. But when it comes to being a landlord, I need it in black and white. And he was like, you're being a bit pedantic. And I was like, no, I'm protecting my own arse. And that's my job. It's not to protect you, it's to protect me. So ultimately, if you're uncomfortable bringing me your ID and your proof of address, then I'm uncomfortable renting to you. And that was literally somebody that I grew up with. Because I have two heads, if you like. I don't have two faces. I'll leave that to some other people. But I have two heads, right? One head is a professional property person, and the other head is people's friend, acquaintance, and family member. And I don't mix those two heads up. And I don't suggest that you do that either. Back to you, Sunil.
Thank you. So this brings me, that story that Paul has just shared brings me on to obtaining ID from people as well. And it doesn't matter where that person has come from, if they're local, etc. But let's for example say that I've known Tony for 20 years. Okay, I know that he's local, he's a local businessman, he's doing work. 20 years, I know him, and we see each other in the street every day. If Tony came to the office and said, I'd like to rent a property, I'd say, yeah, great, Tony, I need your ID, please. Okay, because it's not me, I'm working for the government, I'm border control, and so are you, because we have to then provide the correct stuff. So we had a landlord previously, came in, he was a doctor, and he's, you know me, etc., etc. Yes, I do, but I need your ID. And he gave me his ID. I checked the ID and it was out of date. So we didn't take his property on. So what Paul is saying there is, yeah, you have to have a business head. You can be friendly and everything else. But when it comes to it, you have to make sure the paperwork is done. And with the personality I have, yeah, I can make friends really easily, and I can go and talk to anybody, and my job is to pull the business in, right? And that's what I do every day, pull the business in, and then I hand it over to our lettings team and go, look, you need to go and do this. Now, if people come in and say, Sunil said he would give me a week, anytime they hear the word Sunil said, they know it's not true, because we've trained them to say, whatever they say, no, you have to get the correct paperwork. So I know I've laboured the point a bit, but basically, yeah, make sure that you've got the paperwork, have the don't rely on stuff. So amateur landlords, they may take a deposit but may fail to protect it clearly, and they will say things like, I'm holding the deposit in my bank and I don't know that I had to protect it. Well, that is not an answer in court. If that ever happens, the court will not accept that you didn't know, because they have publicised it enough, and that is not the answer. To say no, it is not the deposit I took, but I took double in rent. Again, that doesn't stand as an option. And you think I've Googled these and I've made these up. No, these are things that people have said to me in the past. Oh, I didn't know I had to hold the deposit separately in an account. I didn't know how to protect it. Yeah, they just, no, it wasn't a deposit at all. Professional landlords, however, will always meet the requirements of the law and correctly register the deposit within, I've said 30 days, that's an error, that's 28 days now of receiving it, protecting not just only the tenant's deposit, but more important, protecting their position should they need to claim on the deposit or serve notice to the tenant. Okay, so that you have to get the paperwork correct, and if you're looking to claim, that must be correct. Paul, did you want to come in?
I'm going to go back a point again, which is in our business. So we don't use letting agents, never have used letting agents, but that's because obviously we talked about the scale of our business earlier on, and we could bring employees in. But for most kind of small to medium sized landlords, I would say that was kind of up to about 5 properties. Then it's always a good idea, whether it's somebody that works inside of your organization, whether it's an outside organization that you have. I'm a great believer in a good cop and a bad cop, shall we say. So somebody that can do what Sunil was saying, which is he can go out and he can get the business and he can kind of, convince people to bring properties to him and put them on, and convince tenants when they walk through the door that that's the property that they should want. But that doesn't necessarily make Sunil a very good bad cop who tells the people what they have to do next. And I always think you need a good cop and a bad cop in any business. Somebody asked me many, many years ago, because I've been renting out property for 30 years, 3 decades, roughly about the same time as Sunil. He's been doing it for about 3 decades as well. And somebody asked me a long time ago, what makes a good landlord? And here's my definition of a good landlord. A silk glove over the top of a steel fist. A silk glove that you wear over the top of a steel fist. So 9 days out of 10, you show that tenant the silk glove. But they need to understand, they need to know, and they need to be prepared for the day you bring out the steel fist. And not everybody has the personality to have the steel fist or be the bad cop, if you like. So, and not everybody has the personality to be the silk glove and, and be the customer facing good cop. I think what you need to do is you need to figure out who you are in your business, whether it's 1 buy-to-let or whether it's 20 or whether it's 100. And you have to play to your strengths. Are you good cop or are you bad cop? And then you find an organization, a letting agent, a business partner, somebody that you employ who is the exact opposite, because good tenancy, I believe, is about a silk glove over the top of a steel fist.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I do agree. And I can do the one part really well. So I need people in my team that can be the bad cop and very politely, by the way, and go, we need this. I don't want to spend my time doing administration, so I'd rather go and talk to people. So I'd get an administrator to go, yeah, collect that passport, and do this, put it into the system. And until you followed all the steps, and they paid all the money, don't release the keys. So it's a simple process. The maximum penalty for not or incorrectly protecting a deposit. Does anybody know what the penalty is? Would they like to unmute and just share their thought? Okay, so the maximum penalty for not or incorrectly protecting a deposit is this. The deposit, let's assume that the deposit is taken is £1,000. The penalty is 3 times the deposit and any legal fees. So if you took £1,000 deposit and you incorrectly protected it, the tenant has a legal right to then ask the court for a refund of that deposit plus 3, and then the court can order 3 times. There could be legal costs, etc., which could add up another £1,000. You're looking at £5,000. But the actual penalty without the costs is £4,000 in this situation, £1,000, and then 3 times that situation. So a lot can ride on it. And as the rents go up, the deposits are going up, then that figure's going to go up. What makes this situation worse, and what's going to happen, or what is already happening, is there's websites like Check My Deposit, which I've just gone past. Check My Deposit is a website where the tenant can check where the landlord has registered the deposit. Now, you know, and I know that what tenants can do now is there are many occasions where you see the ambulance chasers, etc. Have you claimed this because this happened? Have you ever had an accident? Did you get your car insurance done, etc., etc.? This also is the same thing with Check My Deposits. So tenant can check if the deposit's been registered correctly, and there are lots of law firms out there that are now operating and saying that this companies like this, deposit recovery claims.co.uk, has your landlord failed to protect your deposit tenancy in the last 6 years, right? So if you add up the number of tenants that you've had in the last 6 years, you could be there for a big claim, because if that protects this deposit recovery claim person finds out that you've incorrectly protected one deposit, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to go and check all your other properties. They're going to find out where they are from land registry. They're going to find out where they are, and they're going to check them to see what there is. I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm just telling you what the law is. And it's not only the law. So if you get it wrong, that's one thing. But there are companies out there now profiting from our inaccuracies, doing things wrong. So it's so important that the deposit is protected correctly. Again, Paul, I'll give you the opportunity to come in with a story, or
I'm just going to kind of go back again, the slide before, and this idea of kind of ID. It's interesting. If you've got a limited company, and I'm sure many of you have now, you'll have been notified recently that you need to go online by the end of or mid-November, and you have to identify yourself and give ID as part of the directorship of a limited company, not a shareholder, but a director. And this brought to notice for me, because I was just about to do it the other day, that my passport had run out. So I had to go down to the local post office and apply for my passport again, which I should get in about 3 weeks' time. And if I go to, essentially that's the Inland Revenue through Companies House that is looking for identification. But if I go to Companies House and say, listen, I'm sorry, I don't have my passport, right? But is it okay? Can I be a director anyway? What do you think the response will be? So no story is going to be good enough. Only the proof of ID is going to be good enough. So if Companies House are demanding that from you, why shouldn't you demand it from your customers?
Absolutely. Today in the agency, we had somebody that didn't have a driving license or a passport. We've taken their birth certificate as ID, but we'll take something. And we have no obligation to rent a property to anybody unless they've given us the correct information. Because it's our job to make sure that person is legally allowed to be in the country and at least legally allowed to rent a property. And if we don't do it, there are penalties because the government has imposed that. The situation with renters' rights coming in, which I'm doing a presentation on, a webinar next Wednesday, I think it's on the 27th. It is the 27th, Wednesday, is exactly the same situation. It only gets worse for us as landlords because the penalties are £7,000 for the first misdemeanor, and then it goes up to 40,000 if there are multiple offences. So the government are saying, you must do this, and because it's going to make our country better, because we are not going to rent to people that are not eligible to rent to. Deposits must be protected. We must do more things. So yeah, just to make you aware of those things. Major growth, that's the basic point, targeting amateur landlords. I'm not suggesting that anybody here is an amateur landlord at all, because amateur landlords do not go to trainings. They're not worried about the law. They just operate in their own world. So the people here I know are professionals, and they're looking to gain information and make better businesses. If you use a letting agent to let your property, whose responsible is it to ensure that the deposit is protected and is protected correctly? Would you say, I think I may have some options here, the letting agent, the landlord, which one would you say? If you could put that B, okay, thank you. B, B, B. Yeah, it is ultimately the landlord's responsibility, okay, that the deposit is protected correctly. So I was speaking to a landlord about his deposit today and saying, Mr. Landlord, we've negotiated with your tenant. You're going to get £700 out of the deposit, which is £1,500. He wanted to get another £300. So, well, if you go to a dispute situation, the dispute situation is that you may not achieve what you may not get the 300 extra, but you may lose the 700. So the best thing to do is accept the £700. He did in the end, but he did ask me the question. He said, well, if do you hold the deposit? Do you hold, as the agent, are you holding the deposit? The answer is no. We protect it in a deposit scheme and we send the money to the government. He said, well, if an agent was holding the money, they could disappear, couldn't they? Yes, they could. And that has happened. Not in Sittingbourne, but here in Kent. There was an agent, he had 200 properties about 10 years ago, managing 200 properties. The deposit was with him in his client account, and then he stopped paying the landlord for 2 months. And the landlords were phoning him, yeah, sorry, the rent's late. So the tenants had paid, but the landlord, the agent hadn't paid the landlord. And he took all this money, around 300 grand, and he just disappeared to Spain. A really unfortunate situation. The landlords didn't only lose their 2 months' rent, they became still responsible for the tenant's deposit. Okay, so it's important that you have copies of everything, copies of the deposit protection. So if you use an agent, ask for the documentation to make sure that it's correctly protected and that you have files for every property, etc. I'm sure that you do, but that is the key. That you, as the landlord, I am ultimately responsible for that deposit of the tenant. Choosing a good letting agent is the key. Sort of making sure that they're got all the registrations in place, got insurances in place, and it should all be on their website, but you can still ask for that information as well. Paul, did you want to go back?
I think you made that as plain as it could be.
Not saying it happens every day, but it does happen, and it's all about protecting yourself. So we've gone through some slides there. We can open up for questions. I do have another presentation, but that's another time. So if there's anybody would like to ask any questions of us too.
Quick one, Sunil. With the DPS, I registered mine with the DPS, and
Paul, just before you start,
yeah, go on.
Could you just come nearer the mic, because I think it's going to be a good question, but we're having difficulty hearing you.
Okay, yeah, I've got someone else in the office. Let me just turn it up a bit.
Okay, that sounds better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, with the I put mine in a DPS scheme, and I've done for quite a few years. And I think I've only had really one sort of dispute where we had to give some of the rent back and they kept the others. But there is definitely, I think there's 2 sitting in my account still, whereby I've agreed to give them back their funds, but 2 of them haven't collected their funds. What's the scenario there? It just sits in the DPS, full stop. Can you claim it back at some point?
The tenant has left, correct?
Tenant's left. They've not claimed their deposit from the DPS, even though I've released it and said, yeah, I'm happy for it to go. The DPS have obviously tried to get in touch with them to give their deposit back, but they've not been able to. So what happens in that case?
DPS will hold it for a period of 6 years because the tenant can come to you or DPS and say, "Where's my money?" And after that 6 year period, they will return it to you.
Oh, really? No, it comes back.
They will continue to hold, and I think that I've heard landlords who've received it, but they also continue to hold, and for a longer period of time. So
yeah, I'm not chasing it. It's just that, but I was just wondering because I've got two that are sitting there. I didn't actually know the answer to that.
No, ultimately, it's the tenant's money. So you could make a claim, but you're not really entitled to it.
No.
So I think they'll either continue to chase them after 6 years, and then it sits in there, pays their costs, etc. So you could claim for it, but I don't think you'll receive it. I think in the past that has been the case, but not more recently.
Yeah, just interested. I'm not looking to claim. It's just
no
understanding it really.
Yeah, but no, it's a good question, Paul.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to come in with a question?
Yeah, I've got a question, Sunil.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Inka. Thanks for setting this up. I just wanted to make an inquiry about deposit regarding company-led. My understanding about it is you don't have to protect company-led deposit. So I just want to get a better clarification in this house.
Yeah, the question is brilliant, and you're absolutely right, because the tenancy, the short hold or short tenancies and the Housing Act relates to not commercial agreements, and what you're talking about is an agreement with your tenant, like a commercial agreement, correct? So on a rent to rent or a company let. So in that, no, you don't have to protect the deposit. But if you're still deemed that it looks like a tenancy, a tenancy agreement, and everything else is the same. So is it a rent to rent situation that you're in?
Yeah, it's a rent, yeah.
From the landlord?
Yeah, from the agent of the landlord.
Yeah. So what's your role in that? You're the guy that's renting. And
yeah, I was the guy that took the house on rent to rent, and then the agent refused to give me back the deposit because I exceeded the contract earlier than when I was supposed to. And then he said to me that the landlord is taking away the deposit from me, but it wasn't true. I think he was just playing the game, and then he didn't go back to the landlord to say that I've handed over the property. So he still ran the property for the 6 months I was supposed to be, and I handed the property over in 3 months. So he took the deposit, didn't tell the landlord, and then, it's just because I never knew the landlord, so it wasn't a direct contact to the landlord.
No, yeah, that's a good point. On a company situation, the law doesn't apply. That law doesn't apply. I'm sure there are loads of other laws that apply, but that one. Paul?
Yeah, so it's probably, I was thinking about this earlier on, but I didn't know if you want to cover it, but considering it's kind of been brought up, there are some kind of categories outside of the deposit scheme. So commercial tends to be outside of the deposit scheme. And that's an interesting situation because it's essentially a residential property, but let commercially, because you were probably doing the idea for you was probably to do short-term let in that property, right? So short-term let wouldn't be covered by the deposit scheme. So if you've got short-term lets, although in a serviced accommodation you might take a deposit or hold a deposit, it doesn't need to go into the deposit scheme. So there are some deposits or payments, to be more accurate, right? That's called a security payment rather than the deposit, if you want to get pedantic, right? So what they took off of you was a security payment, and the reason they took that security payment likely, right, is because it was securing against you coming out of the contract early. So it's a security payment rather than the deposit. But any short-term lets, we own residential caravan parks as part of our kind of wide kind of remit. and because they're all let on short-term lets, they don't go into the deposit scheme. So any commercial or short-term let isn't in the deposit scheme. If you look at that paperwork, depending on how it was worded, and if it was worded correctly, right, then that would have been a security payment rather than a deposit, I suspect. Sue.
Hi,
Susan, sorry.
thank you. Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I have got HMOs with a lettings agent that I'm not happy with, and I gave them notice about 5 months ago. I sent 2 emails. I sent one and then I thought, oh, I should really copy myself in and resend it. So I did that and it came to me. And I also sent them some form of tracked delivery letter. And all I got was the manager who, in my opinion, isn't overly known for telling the truth, wanting to speak to me on the phone. And the most acknowledgement I ever got from any of the documentation I sent them was just saying, oh, texting or emailing me, or I'd like to talk to you about your email, and not specifying one or what it was about. I was a bit stressed at the time and was changing car, and I didn't want to speak to her because I basically don't trust her. So we're now at the point where next month is when I can leave them. It was a 6-month notice period. And I've got a new, hopefully better agent lined up. But I'm just getting concerned. I can't find the Royal Mail receipt for the track deposit. And I'm just a bit concerned. What do I do if they turn around and say, oh, we never received any of that? The only proof I've got is the second email I sent in which I was CC'd in, and that did come to me. Any advice, please?
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Did you say the tracked deposit or the tracked mail?
Oh, sorry, the tracked mail. The tracked mail is what I meant to say. Apologies.
That's okay. Which are you dealing with, a national company or is it an independent?
No, it is an independent. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure Paul will come in on this in a second, but let me. This is what I would do. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Hang on. Just okay.
This is not professional. Well, I'm saying it's not legal advice. This is what I would do in my experience.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll contact the company, email them first of all, and obtain a copy of all the paperwork, the gas cert, the electrical cert, the EPC, the tenant deposit, any inspections they've done. So you would like a complete file of the tenancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So what you would do is then you would have all the information that you need. And you can also ask for a copy of the diary, because as letting agents, we have packages where when we talk to tenants and landlords, we're making notes. I called this tenant on this day, I requested this, etc., etc. So you're requesting copies of inspections, you're requesting copies of the original agreement that you signed with them, the agency agreement. Okay, so you're not doing anything, there's no confrontation, you're not doing anything wrong. You are just asking for information which you're entitled to. So you build that, so before you build that file up, so you've got everything. So if they then decide to not to, then you get into if you get into a dispute, at least you've got everything. Okay.
Thank you.
That's the first stage, is get all the information from the agent. As I said before, it's one of those things that you should have anyway as the landlord, is the agent is there, but ultimately trustworthy. So get everything that you need. The second thing is write to them and say, confirming that my properties will be handed back at this stage, at the date, and then put the date, okay? And further rents must be paid there. You can also write directly to the tenant, sir, and say, dear tenant, I've decided to change letting agents, and and inform them who the letting agent is. And in the meantime, if there is no switch over, then you can say, please pay rent to you directly. Now, I can tell you that that letting agent would have failed in some of the duties in that contract.
Oh, they have. I could have argued with them about getting out of the contract, for breach of contract. But I just couldn't take the hassle. I had other stuff going on, and to be honest, it was more important to increase cash flow. So yeah.
Yeah, so get the properties back, get in control, get back into business with another agent, and then go back to them at a later stage where you feel like you're in a stronger position, and rewrite the letter to maybe claim back some of the commissions, etc., etc. I'm not against letting agents at all. I'm here for you as a landlady. You asked me a question. I'm just saying, look,
Sure.
we live in Kent, and it happened about 4 years ago. We rented a property through a company, a national company in London, because it was easier for us to get the property let at that stage. When we tried, and after 1 year, when we tried to say, we'll take the property back for self-management, they said, no, you can't. You have to pay us 1 month's rent. And the rents in that area at the time were £1,500. So I phoned, because it was a national company, I phoned the manager, then emails to the manager. I went to the area manager, then ultimately it went on. So you don't own the tenancy. You don't own the tenant. You're working for the landlord. Okay. And
Yes.
I said, well, show me your terms. And if they are the terms in there that you must pay 1 month's rent at the end to exit, we don't do that, because I think it's an unfair term, to be honest with you. If the landlord wants to leave us, we happily let them go, because we know within 6 months they'll come back, and that's happened so many times. So yeah, we didn't pay them, and they didn't pursue it. So but get all the information that you need, first of all nice and politely, and then you can go back and argue things if you wish to. But please hang on, Susan, because I'm sure Paul wants to come in as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I'm quite litigious, if you understand that expression. It means I am quite keen on using legal action. And I have a question, it's a rhetorical question, but I want you to think about the honest answer to this. Are you intimidated when a lawyer's letter comes through the door? No matter who it comes from and no matter what it's about, do you find yourself slightly intimidated by the fact the lawyer's letters came through the door?
Well, yes, I would be. Yeah.
Most people are, right? So what I would suggest that you do is, most solicitors will write a lawyer's letter for about £250 is about the going rate, right?
Okay.
Now, what they say in that letter is they only represent you as your side of the story, right? And they say at the end of that letter, it's without prejudice. In other words, they are just representing your side of the story, right?
Yeah.
I find that £250 that I have spent numerous times, right, to get a lawyer's letter written, right, gets a much quicker and a much more active response than the 20 emails that I send. Right. So I start to value my time compared to the solicitors. So if I've got to write, I'm severely dyslexic. So if I've got to write 20 emails, and each one of those emails,
I've got stuffed hands and have to use speech recognition, and oh my God, it's so slow. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It translates worse than a Scottish person. So I find that's maybe 20 hours of my time compared to £250. And Sunil, who employs me, will tell you I'm slightly more expensive than that. So a lawyer's letter, we all do it. I'm sure there's people in this room who'll say, I don't care, right? And they have a much more criminal background than the rest of us. But for mere mortals, when a lawyer's letter comes through the door, to our business, to me personally, wherever it comes, right, it has 20 times, 30 times the impact of a complaint from a customer. No disrespect intended to my customers, right? Which one am I going to focus on first? The lawyer's letter that came through the door, or the customer that's emailed me 10 times. Now, I could sound like the perfect business owner and say, oh, I'm obviously going to deal with all my customers, but I can also tell you the truth. I'm more likely to focus on the lawyers later. So I would find yourself a friendly solicitor. They will not write that like it's a fact. They will write it like, this is your side of the story. My client tells me that. My client informs me, right? And at the end of it, they'll put a catch-all statement that said, basically, you know, this is what they believe to be true. And if it is true, they'll take action on that basis, right? And that's more likely to get people to sit up and take notice than any email that comes from anybody else. And I'm just going to test that live on here because I do work with Sunil, right? Sunil, you received the lawyer's letter from a chap that you're dealing with at the moment. And you've also received emails from him. Which one did you put the most credence on?
The solicitor's letters. Yeah.
Right.
Every time, because you know, we do it as well. As in, it gets to a certain point, people are not listening, and then you go debt collection or something, and we'll put it in the hands of the solicitor. We've got a commercial property where the guy's great. He rents a pub from us, and pays some of the rent, but not all. And as soon as we put it in the hands of a third-party debt collection company, like Paul's saying, a solicitor, he pays his rent every month. So, yeah.
So you're saying you're short on time, you've got other things to focus on, right? Find yourself a local friendly solicitor, get a cost before they send it. It's called a solicitor's letter. That's literally what it's called. You're not asking them to take on the case. You're not asking them to take it to court. You're asking them for what's called a solicitor's letter, right?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
And you write to them. You have one email to them that outlines what you believe's happened. They then put that in legal terminology and send it to the other side. And I will bet you a crisp £10 note you get a much quicker response.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Suzanne, where are you based?
I'm based in Bristol.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, please let us know how you get on.
Will do. Yeah. It's just whether I try and get back anything for the numerous things that have not been done well. But yeah.
Sunil, I have a hard stop for 8 because I've got to feed my family. So much for being a property entrepreneur. I've got to feed the family. My turn to cook. So have we got time for one more question? Is there one more question? Has anybody got one question to kind of wrap us up?
Suzanne, thank you for your question as well. Really, really useful, and I hope you got some benefit. So yeah, final question.
Not all at once, one at a time will do.
Going once, twice, 3 times. No questions. Okay. So thank you, Paul. First of all, yeah.
Can I make one wrap up statement in probably about 2 minutes?
Yes, please.
I want to blow away an illusion, and I think tonight's presentation should have helped to blow away this illusion, right? If it's not already blown away for you. Property is not an investment. Property is a business. Now, we hear a lot about property investment, but property is not an investment. You know, go and buy stocks and shares, that's an investment. Buy prestige watches, that's an investment. Buy classic cars, that's an investment. Buy some art, that's an investment. Property is a business, and I'll tell you why property is a business. Because whether you rent property or whether you sell property, you have a customer. You can call him a tenant if you want, but he's a customer, or she's a customer. And when you have a customer, you have a business. And when you have a business, you have a job. And there's a lot of people out there selling you, from the government through to lots of other people we could name on social media, selling you that property is an investment, but it's not, it's a business. And one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to go into it and believe it's a business and act like it's a business and treat it like it's a business, right? Or it's going to catch up with you and prove that it's a business, and you'll have a job that you didn't think you wanted. So does that make sense, Susan? You end up with a job that you didn't think you wanted, right? If you treat it as a business from day one, it's the job you've always wanted, right? We get to change the face of society, right? Me, you, and everybody else in this room house people. Me and Sunil also house businesses as well. It's a wonderful privilege, right? But for that privilege, we have to work, because we're in a business, we're not in an investment. Sunil, over to you.
No, that's brilliantly summed up. Thank you, Paul. And I want to say again, Paul, thank you very much for all your contribution this evening, because we didn't actually rehearse this. We didn't actually. Conversation was like 5:30. You know, Paul, I'm on the Zoom this evening, and I'm going to be talking about amateur landlords and professional landlords, etc. Would you like to come along? Because I always forget the date, and so I hope you got some value, because you know, we have two different viewpoints, but tonight I think there was more common ground than not. So yeah, different stories as well. So 27th, next Wednesday, renters' rights, a lot of changes coming, a lot of opportunity as well, but it's the changes that are going to be coming. And so, yeah, look out for the links, and Dan will send them out. Suzanne, if you're in Bath, Bristol, it's okay, because you can still join in the Zoom. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll catch you very soon. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Dan. Speak to you soon. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right.